People often want to know what exercises or stretches they need to do to fix their bad posture. But if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I don't believe physical exercises will lead to better posture, and that the path to genuinely fixing your posture is based around developing your ability to apply your rational mind to your movements. Logically, the next question is then, how do I do that? And so begins this series of videos on how to start self-regulating your postural system. I'm going to start with a statement from Henrietta Russell, an American Delsarte teacher from the late 19th century. The first movement is to get the chest up. I should like to make a call that would reach every man and woman in the country. Lift up your chest. When one says this, 9/10 of them stiffen at the neck, throw themselves backward, and project the body below the waist, the whole figure out of line. They have straightened up? No. You should get the poise of a Greek statue. Lift the chest, keeping the shoulders down. I'm going to stop there because we already have more than enough to begin working. While I have my disagreements with some advice given by Russell, I thought this was put pretty nicely, and we can use this advice to help us get acquainted with directing our movements with our reasoning mind. The first movement, as she said, is to get the chest up, though to be clear, we are not talking of the front of the chest. The chest is essentially your entire rib cage, front and back. Nearly everyone in modern civilization allows their rib cage to droop down towards their pelvis. So the first movement we can think to consciously make is to bring the rib cage up, away from the pelvis. But we have a very strong warning that 9/10 of us are going to make serious errors when we attempt this. So before we try to make this movement of the rib cage up, we ought to heed her warnings. She says, we do not want the body below the waist to project forward, and I will be a little more specific. We do not want anything from the bottom of the sternum down to the pelvis to go forward. Most people, if they attempt to lift their chest, will instead project their lower torso forward. They will push the lower ribs forward, they will push the abdomen forward, they will push the pelvis forward, and they will lift and push forward the bottom of their sternum. The result of this is that their chest will rotate back and down rather than go up. And that is the other warning we must be aware of, that most people will throw themselves backward. If you push the bottom of the sternum, the lower ribs, the abdomen, and the pelvis forward, something has to go back to compensate. Most people, when asked to lift their chest, will throw their head back, will pull their shoulders back, and will move the top of their sternum back. Again, this is all in line with rotating the ribcage back and down, which we do not want. We want the ribcage to more or less go straight up, and not have either end jutting forward or being thrown backward. This is the beginning of what we mean when we say we want to apply our rational mind to how we move our body. Lifting the chest sounds like it should be simple, yet I've listed a significant number of different parts of the body to be concerned with while making that movement. But this is necessary for those of us who have never given much thought to such movements before. We do not want to just lift our chest with no care as to which way it rotates, and which parts go forward and which parts go back. If we do that, our old habits will take over the action, and rather than changing our posture for the better, we will exaggerate the faults we already have. The last thing to note before attempting to lift the chest is that we want to keep the shoulders down. Most people have a difficult time differentiating their upper torso from their shoulders. When they're asked to lift their chest, they will quite frequently lift their shoulders along with their chest, or even instead of their chest. That's not desirable, because it requires effort to keep your shoulders elevated, and that will only make it more difficult to keep your ribcage up. To make sure your shoulders do not go up with your chest, you can order yourself to move the shoulders down. So let's recap the directions to consider in the simple-sounding movement of lifting the chest. 1. We want the ribcage, as a whole, to move straight up away from the pelvis. 2. We do not want the bottom of the sternum, the lower ribs, the abdomen, or the pelvis to move forward. 3. We do not want the head, the shoulders, or the top of the sternum to move backward. And 4. We do not want the shoulders to move up with the chest. In the next installment of this series, we will look at how we can make these orders more specific and effective. But for now, attempting to put these directions into action is a good place to start to learn to think through how you can make a specific adjustment to your body. You may ask, why am I not showing you an example of how to perform this adjustment? And the answer is that imitation is a very poor way to learn. What's better than imitation is you experimenting and attempting to put these verbal directions into action. That is how you will develop your skill in applying your rational mind to your movements. If you're unsure if you're succeeding in what you're attempting, you can always look in a mirror, or film yourself from the side with your webcam, or ask a friend to observe you. Have you moved your lower ribs forward? Have you lifted your shoulders and not your chest? And if you have, can you try again thinking over the directions? In all likelihood, you will fail in your first attempt and your second, maybe even 9 out of your first 10 tries. But if you consider the directions, and heck, even say them out loud to yourself or in your head, you will find your skill increasing. Is it easier to lift the chest while sitting or standing? Can you maintain the elevation of your chest after the adjustment? Does it require as much effort for that as it took to get the chest up in the first place? There are many things to learn for yourself, and as you conduct your experiments, you will learn. If you'd like more direct assistance in learning to correct your posture, I recommend lessons in the initial Alexander technique, which are designed to develop your ability to guide how you move using your rational mind. Lessons are conducted one-on-one over Zoom and will accelerate your development because you will be getting precise feedback on where you're going right and where you're going wrong. And when you are going wrong, your knowledgeable teacher will give you the necessary orders to prevent your old habits from recurring. Once you've developed some skill, your teacher will help you perform more and more difficult gestures while maintaining your good posture. And eventually, you will be making movements that before seemed impossible. Information on how to get lessons in the initial Alexander technique will be in the description. Questions and comments are always welcome in the comment section below.